Hey guys, welcome to the Grant Mitt Podcast, episode number 74. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing how to think big and the magic of it and how it can make a massive impact in your life and in your business. The questions we ask ourselves and the thoughts that we think every single day are slowly shaping us into the person that we are today. It's changing who we are, where we go, who we're around, and what we actually end up accomplishing. So one thing that's so important when it comes to thinking big is, what are you consuming every single day? What are you casually talking about? This is important because even the best in the world can get into cycles of negativity and talking about things that don't actually serve them. For example, one of the sayings that Denzel Washington won when he won an Oscar is he said, average people talk about people, mediocre people talk about events, and excellent people talk about ideas. Be around people who think big and expand your way of thinking. Recently, or last year, I had some friends that actually came and traveled with me, and they'd been successful. They had six-figure jobs, they had great college degrees, and they were doing great. But I hadn't got to spend a ton of time with them. And I wanted to go on this trip, and we were wanting to go to Europe, and we want to go to all these different places and work out there. And I started having I said, hey, I would love for you guys to come, roll with, get your flights, do this, we'll figure everything else out. By the time we're even in the middle of the trip, the ideas that they were talking about, the businesses, them scaling and getting promoted at their business, everything changed about them. And the only thing that changed was they were suddenly around someone that was their same age doing something that no one else that they grew up with that was doing. And they quickly realized, wait, I can do these things also. I need to think differently. I need to approach this differently. Why can't I move up and be the youngest person to ever run this sector of this massive company, or start my business, or become a consultant, or do these different things? Why can't I be the person that does this? And you started seeing them change everything that they were talking about, thinking about. And when they got back from the trip, all of a sudden, success after success after success just started happening. There's one of my close friends that I was actually just on the phone with him earlier today about, we talk regularly about content, we talk about business, and because he's an entrepreneur, we relate to each other. And what's odd is that we've grown up together since we were, 12 years old, 13 years old. And in 2020, TikTok was first coming out, and me and him had both made TikToks, and we were both at about 30,000 followers. And I remember because I was charging my Tesla, and he FaceTimed me, and we're sitting there and we're like, man, we got to change what we're doing. We got to really take this stuff seriously. We got to grow. And we had known somebody that had already had 500,000 followers on TikTok. This is back when it first came out. And was just absolutely killing it. Her brand in real estate, she had gone from someone that had just gotten into real estate a year prior to making the top 1% of incomes of any real estate agent in the entire United States. And she got all of her leads simply from TikTok. And I'm talking to him and I go, man, Cam, we got to change something. We got to make it different. We're both going to get to 100,000 followers in the next 3 months. Let's start making triple the amount of videos. Let's improve the quality. Let's change this. Let's do this. We had that one conversation. And when you have, it's just something weird. And this is in the Bible, and I'm sure in other religions as well, where when you have multiple people of faith in a room that believe in the same goal, the chances of it happening are 100%. When you have people together that believe in the same vision, everything changes. One is different. But when you have multiple, everything changes. And Cam and I had that one conversation. And next thing you know, 3 or 4 days later, I was on a trip because I live in Austin. I was in Houston for business. And I was leaving to go to a work lunch. I was going to meet with some clients. And I said, I need to make some TikToks. I just had that conversation with Cam. And I said, you know what? I'm going to make a quick video. I make that video. And that video ends up going to over 1.4 million views and grows my TikTok following from 30,000, 33,000, something around that, to over 100,000. And I kid you not, A few days later, the exact same situation happened to my friend, and he scaled even further than me to like 150,000 and just absolutely crushed it. And so me and him have a saying that, man, every time we talk about what's going to happen next, what our plans are, and what are the things that we need to do in our businesses and our careers and media and all these different things, that suddenly everything just explodes. Why does that happen? We start thinking big. Those conversations and actually being able to communicate with someone who believes in you like you believe in them changes everything. It's the magic and the power of thinking big. This is the biggest mistake that anybody can make. And I can tell you that while I have a long way to go, and if you know me personally, you know that I always think I'm behind. I always got to do more. And I'm so hard on myself. But I will tell you this. Being just in my 20s now and doing and seeing and experiencing some of the things I've experienced, I only was able to experience those things because, one, I thought I deserved it, and two, I thought it was possible. So therefore, I had the courage to take the action to be able to go and achieve those things. And many times we sell ourselves short. We think, well, I don't look like people that usually do that. Or, I don't come from money, so I don't know how I could do that. I experienced that. I didn't come from any money. I didn't have anybody around me that was doing something so astounding and incredible that it just was unthinkable. The only people I could look at and try to learn from was people on Instagram and books and studying the most successful people. So how was I going to do it? I first just had the courage to think that I could. That's step one. You got to be delusional. Delusional people change the world. Delusional people change the world. It takes delusion to be broke and not being able to rub two pennies together, and to deep down believe that in the next 5 years, you're going to create generational wealth. It takes delusion to be someone that grew up in poverty, to believe that they're going to risk it all, move to this city, figure out how they can make their money, and suddenly be able to retire their parents. One of my good friends, I just had lunch with him, Saturday. And his whole family is originally from Haiti. And we were talking about solar, and he's like, man, it's crazy because in Haiti, Grant, we've been using solar since the 90s and 80s because we need it because there's not a lot of sources of power. And he's like, I grew up with no money. He said, man, like I give my parents credit. Like they raised us right. And everything I learned as far as my work ethic and my focus and my belief in myself was from my parents. And he ended up being able to go to school and go into university through football. And through that, he was a great athlete. He was able to get an unbelievable education, and he got into tech. He ended up closing all of these massive, massive deals. He moved to Austin. He did unbelievable, invested in all these incredible things because he's so intelligent, but he betted on himself. He's worked his tail off. And you know what he was able to do at the end of last year? He was able to call his mom and his dad and say, hey, y'all are retired. You never have to work again. So think about this. A kid in a line of parents who came here and immigrated from another country, their son now retired him, making unbelievable money, but not only about the money, but is being successful and is going to do incredible things. Why? Because he had courage and belief and delusion to believe that he deserved more for himself and his family. And look what's happening. Stories like this are happening all around us. But if you do not take the action that you know you need to take because you think so small, you're not going to do these things. So I love Grant Cardone because anytime I think I'm thinking big, you look at Grant Cardone or you talk to him and you're like, man, I need to think bigger. And sometimes we underestimate our abilities and our skill sets. I was talking to my uncle about this. My uncle's in commercial real estate, and he was telling me, because I'm so hard on myself, and sometimes when I give you guys these things, they're almost like I'm telling this to myself too, is he goes, and you don't realize all the things that you're doing. Like people that could be 30, 40 years ahead of you, they've never done these things, Grant. So leverage that. He would always tell me that. And I'm like, man. And if you're young and maybe you're right out of college, but you're unbelievable at social media and you've grown a TikTok to 30,000 followers and you're incredible and you're creative, there's not many people in the world that have that information and that skill set. If you're unbelievable in healthcare and you know so much information, I mean, think about how many entrepreneurs don't know jack about it. You could impact and change their health and their lives and their families' lives forever. So what is your skill set? And let's say, well, Grant, I'm trying to figure mine out. The best thing I can tell you is what just feels natural to you. Have you ever had a sport or maybe a subject that you're just passionate about? And when you speak about it, everyone turns. That is what you need to focus on. I was talking to my dad about this. My dad, I've seen him go through so many different things in his career, and he always worked at companies, and he was a great manager of people. And one thing that he always did, and we talked about in detail, is he realized that his mistake was when we were young, 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, something like that. I can't remember the exact age. He was in a specific industry. He was in the power industry, and he would build substations and manage that whole thing and sell them to companies. So let's say it's ExxonMobil needs a substation. He was in sales for a company that would do that. He would manage that, and he was unbelievable about it. Expert. He knew back and forth. And at that point, early on in the 2000s, the internet and software was taking off, and he ended up jumping into that industry, and it ended up not working out. And it was really difficult on him. It was a struggle that he had to learn from, but that's what makes people successful, right? We've all experienced that. And he ended up leaving one company where it ended up being super successful, and the company ended up selling for a ton of money, and he would have been an executive, and he realized he made that mistake. And so I'm actively involved in the crypto industry, and I've done crypto mining, and I went to this really exclusive event, and he ended up coming with me because he's in the power business. I was like, hey, you should come. And we were sitting there, and we're talking to all these people. They run this $1 billion company, and my dad was just there, and then I ended up seeing other friends and people I know, and we just went about it, and we talked and we experienced stuff. He said some things, and after I called him, I said, Dad, one thing I noticed is no matter who we were around, when you spoke about the power side of this specific business, everyone shut up and listened. They immediately glued into what you're saying. And I said, you know why they did that? And he was like, well, why? What do you think? I said, because they don't know how the hell it works. And he was like, you can kind of see, he's like, oh, damn, you're right. He goes, you have to be the power guy. You're not meant, for example, when you were talking about other things, they were like, yeah, and then just keep it going, because that's what they do. And you can do it good too, but that's what they think they're the best in their industry at. They're unbelievable at those things. But when you spoke about power and energy and actually the back end operation of building one of these massive things and what it would actually take on the infrastructure side, everyone shut up. Stop trying to be the executive, the CEO, the deal maker. Be the power guy. That's your play. Find a way to know what you do good and stop trying to be and do all these other things and think big. So what if you do this, you do this, you do this? Next thing you know, he calls me 2-3 weeks later. He goes, oh my God, you would not believe it. He was in the middle of putting together, there was this group from Eastern Europe that want to invest all these hundreds of millions of dollars into infrastructure. They needed a guy. Next thing you know, they're trying to cut him in on this massive project because of one thing. He knows power. He was able to potentially make more than he's ever made in the last 5 years, 10 years in one potential deal because he focused on what he was good at and he thought big. So that's the best thing I can tell you is, and this is what I tell all my close friends and my family, is you got to know yourself, but you got to also think big. If you're a sales rep at a company right now and you're doing 5 deals, why can't you do 20? And the simplest way to solve all of your problems that you're facing right now is to simply ask a very basic question. What would I have to do to accomplish my 10-year goal in 6 months if my life depended on it? Why can't I triple my sales volume in the next 3 months? Now, this is important. The things that you answer to those questions that seem so far-fetched and out of reach, well, I'd have to somehow call this many people a day, or I'd have to triple my appointments, or I'd have to do these things, is typically the answer to the reason why you aren't doing the thing that you want. So if you can find those problems out, which is step one, then you can actually start figuring out how to solve them. So think about it with the story of my dad. Is he stopped trying to be something he wasn't. Next thing you know, now he just got promoted at the company he works for. He just got bumped on this. He's doing so much better at what he's doing because he stopped trying to be something he wasn't. He focused on his skill set, which he was so amazing at, that everyone else, when he spoke, was like, damn, this sounds interesting. I don't know what the hell he's saying, but I need to learn. I need this guy on my team. Everything changed. You can't do that without knowing yourself and without thinking big. You have to know in every deal, if you work at a company, if you're on a team, what is your role? If you look at sports, for example, I'll give you an example. When the Oklahoma City Thunder had an unbelievable team at one point, they had Kevin Durant, they had Russell Westbrook, they had James Harden, and a few other people at their peak when they were young. It's crazy to think about it if you guys know anything about American NBA basketball. James Harden was the sixth man, but he knew his role and he didn't have an ego at the time. And he came in and was the absolute best sixth man in the entire NBA because the team was stacked. It was almost like an all-star team. But he knew his role at that time and played it. Think about Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen, no matter what anybody says, is no Michael Jordan. But Scottie Pippen knew his role. He knew his role. Michael Jackson had his role in music. Michael Jordan had his role in basketball. When you look at Tom Brady, you look at the Patriots, you look at the receivers and people that they had on their team. The best teams, the best individuals know their role and go all in on it. Not everyone's a number one, number three, number four, number two. Some people are unbelievable at marketing and need to stop doing everything different. But you need to think as big as you possibly can with your direct skill sets and find your place in this world and teach the world how to treat you. I read this, and if you guys know 50 Cent, his brand new book is amazing. I just finished it. And he said the writing's not going to always be on the wall. He talked about how he was the number one artist in the world, platinum record after platinum record. And it was the second or third album. And it was still number one on the charts. It was still all these things. But suddenly, the actual times that people purchased that album was down like 40, 50%. But compared to everybody else, it was as good as anyone. It was incredible. But he knew when he went to the studio or when he went to the record label, everyone was giving him hugs, telling him how great he was. But he didn't see, then no one told him, hey, 50, you better be ready to pivot. This music thing doesn't last forever. No one said, hey, 50 Cent, man, I know you just sold all these millions of records, but that's 40% less what you did before. You better start thinking about it because if not, that money's going to dry up. He read the writing on the wall that no one told him. And he started prepping for the next phase of his business, where he ended up investing into vitamin water and building it into I think it was $1 billion deal, and he ended up having a massive piece of equity in it. He ended up learning the TV industry and how to produce and build TV shows that now became number one out of everyone in the entire United States. The writing wasn't on the wall, but he understood his skill sets, things he was passionate about, and he was able to have the instincts that it took to get to where he wanted to be, to now being one of the most successful people that ever came out of hip hop. But he evolved his brand and his business and took all of his fans with him. This is something that you can't teach, but tactically you have to understand. Who are you and what is your role and how big are you thinking? Because if you can change these questions that you're asking yourself and you can look at things from a different perspectives, everything can change. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode. As always, you guys can find me on all my social media channels at Grant Mitt. As always, if you follow me on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, make sure to subscribe so you regularly get updates when new episodes are out. But other than that, I hope you guys have an incredible week, and I'll see you guys again for episode 75. Thanks, guys.